Mr. Peter Bone. Question 3, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I would like to answer this question together with questions 5, 9, 14, 17 and 18. The Government has listened to concerns expressed across the House about the loan charge, and as the House will know, an independent review is now in progress under the leadership of Sir Amyas Morse. While it is underway, it is right that the loan charge should remain in force and that the Government implements legislation that this House agreed on. The review will conclude by mid-November in order to let anyone who may be affected know and to give people time to plan in advance to the January self-assessment filing deadline. To help taxpayers who may need longer to pay, HMRC have confirmed again that there is no maximum time limit for payment plans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The loan charge is the worst form of retrospective taxation. It is causing real hardship and distress to law-abiding taxpayers. This week is reported that the 7th person has taken their own life because of the loan charge. Minister, how many more people are going to take their lives before you scrap the loan charge?
Well, I thank Honourable Fan for the question. As he will be aware, I will let him correct him on the facts. We have heard notice of 3 suicides that may have some connection with the loan charge, which have been referred to the Independent Office of Police Conduct, and in one case there's been a referral back to HMRC, but in all other cases there's been no further development. So I do not recognise the picture that he describes. Let me also remind him that although there are these effects much bruited, there is also the question of collecting the several £billion of back tax that is due.
Nick Dakin.
Mr. Speaker, what's clear is the retrospective loan charge is causing huge pain and upset as people are threatened with their livelihoods and homes. Will the Minister ensure that the review hears directly from people so affected? And will he either suspend the loan charge or at least tell HMRC that those who have signed a settlement agreement can at least pause the payment until the review is concluded?
Very good.
Well, I'm grateful for the question. Of course, any injury to individuals from any acts of government or agencies is something to be deeply regretted. I completely recognise that. And if that has happened here, then of course it's appropriate for the House to feel that way. I have no powers to direct Sir Amyas Morse. I understand he is taking evidence from external sources, including the APPG and the Loan Charge Action Group, which acts as its secretariat, with whom I have met with the APPG and the secretariat as well, myself separately. So it is being fully addressed. The details of settlement have been set out on gov.uk.
Thank you, Speaker. On the issue that my honourable friend raised with the Minister, the hard fact is that 7 people who are facing challenge or investigation for the loan charge have taken their own lives. He can attribute cause as he wishes. The fact is also that this distress has been caused by the incompetence historically of the HMRC, and then by the willingness of ministers subsequently to use retrospective action in taxation. Now, is the government going to give up on the premise of using retrospective taxation in the future, or does it fall to this House to pass laws that will stop them doing so in future?
This legislation is not retrospective, Mr. Speaker, and there are defined circumstances under which HMRC and the government may seek to use retrospective taxation, and it does so with extreme care and attention not to do so. All I'm doing is referring the right honourable gentleman to the facts as reported to the Independent Office of Police Conduct, and as he will be aware, these are immensely difficult cases in which many circumstances and many factors may be in play.
Dr. Matthew Orford.
Despite there being a review, the loan charge remains in place, and HMRC are continuing to pursue people for advance payment notices, of which there is no right of appeal. So this clearly goes against the spirit of the review. So will the Minister now suspend all activity?
The review is designed to assess whether or not the government's policy is an appropriate one, and it would be wrong to change the policy until the review has had a chance to make a decision on this. May I also remind him that the Treasury and this House in general has a great interest in supporting the provision for public services which the recovery of tax avoided in this way, in many ways egregiously avoided, is designed to fund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I honestly don't think, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister is really paying attention. These are a lot of comments coming from members behind him, not opposite him. These are people who follow professional advice, declared their arrangements to HMRC, who did nothing. Yet now HMRC are going back and taxing them retrospectively, all the way back to 1999 in some circumstances. The Minister cannot stand at the dispatch box, Mr. Speaker, and just ignore what he is hearing from the benches behind him.
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. We are very carefully attending to concerns that have been expressed. That is why I announced changes in July. That is why I've written on 2 occasions to colleagues to inform them of changes and developments. That is why we've instituted this independent loan charge review, and its purpose is precisely to scrutinise the extent to which government policy is appropriate.
Mr. Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister is bound to be aware of the scale of concern across the House and indeed amongst those who are directly affected by this. Will he undertake, given the fact that he has outlined a date of mid-November, that immediately upon that date being reached, that he will take urgent and immediate action to assist those affected by this decision?
Minister.
I can certainly, I of course have no idea what the loan charge review will conclude, but I can absolutely guarantee that we will look at it with all due speed and dispatch once we've seen its findings.
Justine Greening.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many members of this House, I have constituents who have been egregiously affected by this. I think the Minister's response is unacceptable from their perspective. He should suspend all the loan charge activity whilst the review is underway and until the government has responded to it. And can I ask him what preparation is happening within HMRC to prepare for the policy shift if the review comes out and says this is unfair, it does need to be changed? How will he deal with those constituents of mine who've already had to pay, but perhaps will be proven to have paid erroneously?
Minister.
Well, I'm unable to comment on what the review is going to conclude. I think we can certainly look to whether or not there may be changes that HMRC would take rapidly thereafter. It possesses the capacity to do so quite quickly if necessary, as does government. So we'll have to review that moment when it comes.
Carol Monaghan.
7 needless deaths, 7 families tragically left to deal with the consequences. And yet the companies who have promoted these schemes, companies such as AML, are getting away scot-free. AML and its director, Doug Barrowman, appear to have moved away with no consequences whatsoever. In fact, they were boasting that the HMRC are not pursuing them for any assets or unpaid taxes. So the Minister detailed the efforts that have been taken against these companies who have caused so much pain and tragedy.
Well, I think the Honourable Lady is absolutely right to focus on the activity of the promoters. They are extremely ingenious in operating within the framework of law, but doing some very nasty and duplicitous things. They often operate offshore, and it's extremely difficult to close them down when they are constantly mutating from one company to another. But I can assure the House that we are looking at this problem extremely closely, and I hope to return to the House at some point fairly soon with some sort of thoughts.
I worry that the government characterises those who are suffering from the loan charge as being in some way egregious tax avoiders, when it is abundantly clear that in the case of my constituents, they did it on advice, openly, and in the belief that the scheme was approved by HMRC. I also worry that HMRC are behaving in a fashion towards taxpayers which is frankly new, and in many cases tax advisers say unprecedented. And I have to say to my honourable friend that I also think that the retrospectivity is deeply questionable.
Minister.
Well, I must say I'm surprised to hear a man of his legal standing and status regard this as retrospective, because it plainly is not. There are many parts of tax policy. There are many parts of tax policy which have to look back to the basis of an asset or liability, and that has happened here. In this case, HMRC has taken quite vigorous action over the years in different forms to let people know. Of course, it's subject to the loan charge review. We'll see what that concludes. But may I also remind him that these people were, in many cases, paying very little or zero in tax. And to seek, of course, the circumstances can differ, but there are a large number of people who knew or should have known that they were avoiding tax and doing so.
Mike Penning.
Speaker, the Chancellor will know that one of the fiscal policies this government has which is fundamentally wrong is the loan charge retrospective taxes on our constituents. Whether it's one death, no deaths, 7 deaths, families are being destroyed because of this retrospective charge, and surely we should put a stop to it now.
Policy on living standards is the matter in hand, which the right honourable gentleman has.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is fiscal policy, Mr. Speaker, in the interests of my honourable friend, and he's right to raise this. He would have heard the Financial Secretary answer questions and point to the independent inquiry that is taking place by a gentleman that has considerable respect, and we will await the outcome of that report.
Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend knows, those affected by the devastating loan charge have welcomed the independent review, but feel it would be better conducted by a tax judge. Does the Minister agree, and would he also agree that a suitable outcome from the review would be only to apply the loan charge from when it was introduced in 2016, not apply it retrospectively?
Well, I thank my friend for that question. I've addressed the substance of it, but let me raise the point about Sir Amyas Morse. I think Sir Amyas is a superb choice. The honourable friend may be aware that there was a debate in the House of Commons on the 6th of March 2019 in which the Chamber united in their praise of him across the parties. The chair of the Public Accounts Committee called him a fearless advocate for what is good, challenging governments whatever party. The Liberal Democrat spokesman said he was not only unfailingly courteous but had the intelligence of steel and a knack for calling out obfuscation, fudge and imprecision, and a reputation of being completely fair. I think he's a very good choice to lead this review.
Amber Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have had heartbreaking meetings with constituents from Hastings regarding the loan charge. Tragic, sad stories about the destruction of families and of their finances. While I welcome, of course, the review that is to take place, can I urge the Chancellor to reconsider the position of not suspending it during that review?
I don't know if my honourable friend caught the discussion we had earlier about this, but the purpose of the review is to establish whether the government is pursuing the right policy. It makes no sense at all to change that policy until we've heard from the review. I absolutely sympathise with the concerns that have been felt across the House, and we have taken steps so far to try to mitigate that, both as within government and from HMRC itself.
Cryer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister now answer the question asked earlier by the Right Honourable Member for Hastings? What is the reason for not suspending the loan charge scheme just until the inquiry is completed? It's not a request for a change of policy, just to suspend the scheme.
The reason is because the inquiry is designed to test the policy, and the policy remains in place until the inquiry is over. If the policy were ended now or suspended, all that potentially would occur would be more confusion if the inquiry took the view that ultimately the government was in the right.